Okay, well, in that case, Leo Sanchimaniabu Kachamalia and Nepo Isabel Guerrero Teak. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Isabelle Guerrero. I am a fourth year PhD student from the University of Nevada, Reno, working under Dr. Carolyn White. I greet you today in the language of my grandfather's people, the Yaqui or Yoeme of modern day Sonora, Mexico. I'm very excited to be here speaking with you, sharing a project that's really near and dear to my heart. I did want to say thank you to Samantha Rubinson. I know she's not here today, but for inviting me to give this talk in the speaker series. I will be discussing my dissertation work, The Place Where Antelope Go to Dream, Collaborative and Historical Archaeology, Tunna Nosi Kaiva Gwaa. This is a really fun project, so I'm really excited to be chatting about it. So let's get into it. A quick note about names. The site is officially called Tunna Nosi Kaiva Gwaa, but you'll often hear me say like Tunna Nosi or TNKG just to shorten it. This is actually a local Numu or Northern Paiute toponym, and the words directly translate to Antelope Dreaming Mountain Place. So this was actually a name provided by the late Mr. Marlin Thompson of the Yarrington Paiute tribe. However, the translation that my colleagues and I tend to use is the place where antelope go to dream. But the more accurate translation, according to Mr. Cliff Shaw, who is good friends with Mr. Thompson and actually the original recorder of this site, is that the translation is more like a place in the mountains where people went to dream about the antelope. So I like it because it's a lot more eloquent. It's a very just fantastical name, in my opinion. But in addition to that, one of our community member volunteers, Mr. Joseph Lent, who is Northern Paiute and currently a member of the Bridgeport Indian Colony Tribal Council, he has told us that the entire region of this Nevada, California, Tablelands, Bodie Hills area is called Tuvugatudu, which is really it's translated to the place where the teachings reside in that kind of sense. And I could be getting all of that wrong. So if they are happy to correct me anytime, but I'm trying to do my best to learn the traditional names of these places. And I wanted to just note these different names because there's just so many different modern and traditional names for this place. And it's not just the Numu ones, there's other native names as well. But we try to keep it all as organized as we can. But for the purposes of the talk, I'm going to stick with Tunna Nosi or TNKG. Also, I'm going to try to do my best to narrate or give some sort of explanation for all the images I have on my presentation. Just maybe a quick little bird, but this one is one of my favorite on the screen. It's a bow stave tree, which if you don't know what that is, it's a tree. This one in particular is juniper, where it had a couple notches cut in at the top, at the bottom, and over time, the bark bowed out and was removed from the tree and was used to make a bow for bow and arrow technology. Now, not many of these trees survive on the area that I'm working in. I think 2 have been recorded. I've literally only ever seen this one. This is a picture I took, but they're really, really cool to see. I'm really glad that this one survived, but so if you ever are out in nature and you are looking for something cool, I would check out to see if the trees have any notches in them. So quick background on my project, really to understand Tunna Nosi, you first have to understand the broader landscape it is a part of. So this would be Tipu Sonya Hapu, or the Dry Lakes Plateau. This is a National Register district located within the California Bodie Hills. A small volunteer team and myself, as well as the Bridgeport Indian Colony, have been working to amend the National Register listing to make it what's called now a traditional cultural place and extend the boundaries to add certain private properties that weren't included on the original nomination back in 2001. And this was because that property owner just didn't want their areas included, but the new property owner does. And so that's where we've landed. I apologize, I can't show you an actual map, but this is an image of part of the National Register District that's now hopefully going to be a TCP. But this particular landscape is really unique in that it was visited by many Numu peoples and other native communities for, thousands of years. There are over 70 sites within the district showcasing continual and seasonal use throughout time. The primary activities you would see occurring in this area on this plateau would be hunting, but a majority you would also see is plant gathering and processing. The plateau is still home to pronghorn, sage grouse, and other upland sagebrush steppe fauna. And actually, it contains over 30 edible and medicinal plant species, all of which are still present on the plateau today. And this is really important because the district boundaries go right up to the California-Nevada border. The Tunna Nosi Mesa is directly northeast of the Dry Lakes District. And, Tunna Nosi is super interconnected, and it does not exist in this vacuum. And it's really part of this broader cultural landscape. And really what I've been told by my colleague Kirk Halford, who did the Dry Lakes original nomination, is that if that modern day border didn't exist, he would have gone all the way to include the Tunna Nosi Mesa as well. So we're really just filling in the gaps here. But this is, a big project that has been undertaken by myself and my colleagues. Quick plug, if you are interested in actually contributing to this in some way and offering some support, I can maybe drop it in the chat later, but you can offer your public comment, because this nomination is actually being heard on November 7th, and anyone is available to comment on this project. And if you're interested, please do. We're really excited that this is going forward. It's a really unique area, and we're getting it protected fully this time, rather than back in 2002 or 2001. It was not listed with its complete area covered. So this has been a huge labor of love from a bunch of people. So I'm very excited that this is getting to the spot where it's nearly done. And this is actually a drone image I took very recently in the past couple weeks. This is of Beauty Peak in the background and the East Dry Lake, still with water in it. Because these are dry lakes, they tend to only have water for part of the year. And I was really excited to see that the water was still there. There were little grebes on the lake. There was, we believe, a golden eagle, which seemed to be stalking the grebes. Didn't get it, but there was a lot of amazing wildlife was up here. And on the shoreline, there are rock art sites that you can see. They're mostly intact. There is some vandalism, but for the most part, because it's such a difficult spot to get up to, this whole area tends to be very well preserved. So that is great to see. And it's always fun to take a trip up here, but again, it is a bit of a harder place to get up to. So background continued, getting into Tunna Nosi Kaiva Gwaa. This is a big site located in the Nevada side of the Bodie Hills. It's a pinyon-juniper woodland environment, and kind of at the very edge of our district area that we're proposing, it gets into sagebrush area. But what I really want to emphasize that first and foremost, this entire region is considered a sacred site to my tribal partners and community members at large. And in addition to that, it's archaeologically considered a really unique large-scale trap complex containing animal hunting features such as corrals, drive lines, rock alignments, hunting blinds, rock rings, projectile points, middens, and lithic scatters. And all of these were likely used to hunt pronghorn or other artiodactyls in the region, including mule deer and the bighorn sheep. So you can see so many different things related to this particular type of hunting. You see the structures that still exist. On the slide, I've included a couple of, they look like little rock piles, but we call them rock anchors. And inside of them, they'll usually contain the remains of a juniper post that would have been used to help build the actual hunting structure. In addition to these, structures, there are village sites and other big sites such as petroglyphs, rock art, or rock writing sites that are on the mesa. As a note, I don't really display the petroglyphs because I'm still in the process of discussing with my tribal partners what is appropriate to show and what isn't, making sure that anything that is more sensitive is kept confidential per their wishes. But other things such as the actual hunting structures and rock rings we can show. These, different structures are associated mostly with hunting, but there are other functions such as, domestic use or pinyon caching. Because it's a pinyon-juniper woodland environment, there is a lot of pine nuts available. This year in particular was a huge boom year, and you could just pick pine nuts right off like your, chest level. It was incredible. And additionally, with all this pre-contact material, you also get material that dates really recently to the last 100 or 150 years or so the historic period, which I will get into in a short while. But there, a lot of work has been done on this pre-contact side of things, by my colleagues and such. So this is really a unique complex, and it's hard to really emphasize that. I am not a pre-contact archaeologist. I deal with the historic period, but this is really just an incredible site in the Western Great Basin in Nevada. It is in Nevada. It's right on the border, so it's an incredibly special place that I really think needs to be protected. So with that, I just wanted to show you a couple more images here. This is another drone image. My colleague Eric Dillingham is in the top there. He's pointing actually at a hunting blind that's a part of this large rock wall. This is probably the most eastern wall of a corral we call TN1. This is the largest corral on the mesa. And when you're hunting something like pronghorn, you need a really large corral to be able to get them in and ensure that they're not escaping and funnel them into this particular point where, in that case, they would be killed, probably using bow and arrows in the last 600 to 1,000 years. But prior to that, you would have gotten the use of spears, which I'll talk about in a second. This is actually a knob, and you could, if you look closely, you might be able to see the rock writing petroglyphs. I figured this was appropriate just because it's a really important part of the landscape. So this is called Lizard Lookout, named for a small lizard petroglyph that is on here, and it's really central to the whole mesa. It has this incredible 360-degree view of multiple, like the South Mesa site and the Northern Mesa, and the saddle area in the middle. And right below this knob is this area where you have another corral or another set of hunting structures that we call TN4. These structures are, sloping down this ridge, and they were also probably used to hunt pronghorn, possibly mule deer instead. But this is a really unique spot that I wanted to highlight. In regards to chronology and the projectile points, Tunna Nosi has been used by Native peoples since the beginning, since creation, time immemorial. If you wanted to go based on the archaeological dating, we can only relatively date it based on projectile point typologies. We don't have any carbon data or C14 data samples. It's all based on what we know about the chronology projectile points. So this particular chronology indicates that the site has been used continuously for over 5,000 years. And we know this because we find many different projectile points in the same exact spot. So these projectile points include Humboldt, Gatecliff, and Carson points, which date between 3,800 and 4,800 years ago. There's probably several others that date earlier than that. It's just there's a huge amount on the mesa, and there hasn't been a dedicated work to really look at every single one of them. Probably forthcoming based on my colleagues' research. But in addition to that, we have Elko corner-notched, Elko-eared points, which date to about 1300 to 3800 years ago, Eastgate and Rose Springs points, which date to 600 to 1300 years ago. And then you have Cottonwood triangular points and Desert Side Notch points. These overlap in time period. Cottonwood triangular points are a little bit older, with between 200 and 900, and Desert Side Notch points date from about 150 to 600 years ago. With this chronology, it is a little bit imperfect because we're only looking at materials on the surface. Sites have been looted before, so that might bias the data, but there's a huge plethora of these all over the mesa. You usually find them in these areas called kill zones. So these exist typically at the entrances of these corral structures. That's where the actual firing of the projectile points would have occurred and would hit the animals, and you'll usually get the fragments of them in these areas. So most of these came from a kill zone, that what you see on screen, minus actually the very bottom one. This is the white chert projectile point is an arrow point. It's one of the Cottonwood triangular points. This was found in a wash, so probably washed down at some point, but very lucky that it was intact. Right above it is a Desert Side Notch point, as well as the red chert one on the bottom left there. The two projectile points on the top are both spear points. I believe the one on the left is likely a gate cliff, so it's probably quite old. The one on the right is a little bit harder to tell. I just know it's an Elko-eared series, but both of them are potentially quite old. And they came in the same region as the middle obsidian Desert Side Notch point, which you can tell means that someone was using this area 600 years ago and over 4,000 years ago. So it's really, really interesting to see all of these in the same spot. In regards to Tunna Nosi during the historic period, this is kind of where my dissertation is situated. I define historic period for the purposes of this project as the time after colonial settlers appeared on and around the Tunna Nosi landscape. The time period I'm really focusing on is between 1850 and 1950, and this range captures both the inception and end of the boomtown periods of Bodie, California, and Aurora, Nevada. These boomtowns were built on the mining industry, which is still prevalent in the region to this day, and additional industries cropped up in the region to support the mining industry, and this included logging and charcoal production. It's clear that these activities occurred on the mesa as there's presence of historic cut stumps and wood piles, as well as large charcoal platforms, where wood burning would have occurred, and the charcoal as a product would have been transported to probably sawmills, including the Del Monte and Antelope sawmill, or perhaps the actual towns of Aurora and Bodie themselves, maybe to the blacksmith shop, maybe to local community customers, but that is where a lot of this fuel would have been going to. The part that's still, deserves further investigation is that who was participating in these industries up on the mesa, what exactly the products were being used for. I think I have a good sense of that at this point, but the actual who is still kind of a mystery, because in other parts of Nevada, you have Italian immigrants working on these charcoal ovens, and we don't get those ovens out here, which is really interesting. However, we do have a history of Chinese workers up in this area and Paiute people who were up here during the historic period, as this was their long-standing home. So what you see on the screen here in the very top image is actually a piece of Chinese brownware, typically used for storage purposes. The second image is a button that came from a Chinese cabin site. The third image from the top down, this is a charcoal platform. So they're typically these circular structures with built up soil, and they have this thin coating of like charcoal all over it. It's and sometimes they have artifacts strewn about the area and sometimes they don't. I haven't really found a pattern to that yet, but the very bottom picture is actually a small black glass bead that was found at a known Paiute campsite. And because of the presence of the glass bead, this indicates that it was likely, deposited there sometime post 1850. So a lot of rich stuff found on the mesa. I'll have more pictures of newer materials that I recorded this past field season in a second. But in addition to that, this is actually the remnants of the Antelope sawmill. This is basically smack dab in the middle of, where the mesa was, in between the town of Aurora. The upper part of this, in the background, you can kind of see the remnants of the Aurora Road. And much of the sawmill does not exist today. Same with the one right next to it, which is the Del Monte sawmill. Very small remnants, probably heavily looted as well, because it's right next to this recreational road. But this would have been a place where the materials from Tunna Nosi were being transported. And these were both also taken by drone. So this is a quick map of the general area. I apologize, I cannot show a modern map just because this, we do want to keep some of these sites confidential, but if you could see here at the center, part of this huge circle is a little yellow star. This is the exact center of all the, all the materials that I've recorded, and it has like 100-mile buffer. But essentially, you're looking at the center of the mesa. And below it, the first set of maps, I've overlaid historic Aurora maps. So that's about where Aurora would have been located. And then right at the bottom, that is the overlay of the historic town of Bodie. So that's where Bodie would have been located. And on the far left side, that's where, far left side on the bottom, that's where the town of Bridgeport, modern day Bridgeport in California would be. It's in between these modern day Rough and Bodie creeks. So just to situate you on what we're looking at as best as I can. And the whole background is actually the 1911 geological survey map. So I tried to make this a more historic image, but still be able to kind of situate people where we're at. In regards to my dissertation background, again, I'm a historical archaeologist by training, which means I just absolutely love cans. But more broadly speaking, I am interested in understanding how settler industries affected Native peoples, cultures, and landscapes, and really changed the way, economies in these areas existed when these settler industries came into play. And I originally heard about the site through my professor, Dr. Randy Haas, and my now colleague, Eric Dillingham, who is the former district archaeologist of the Bridgeport Ranger District, as well as Dr. Paul Burrow of Stanford University. And through them, I was introduced to my now very good friend and colleague, Miss Debbie Lundy-Painter, who is now the former cultural coordinator and interim TIPO of the Bridgeport Indian Colony. Her replacement, Danielle Christensen, has been doing a great job, and she, is also working on these projects now. And what ended up happening is I just sort of asked her, how can my expertise and resources and interest in this area be beneficial to Tunna Nosi? And from there, we kind of developed a lot of different project ideas. But what we ended up settling on was this idea of nominating the whole site as a traditional cultural place district, the National Register of Historic Places. And this was supposed to be done after we completed the amendment to the Dry Lakes Plateau, which now that that's done, and now that I'm in a place where my dissertation track that I can do that, that's what we're starting on. I did want to include a couple more pictures here. I think this is just one for now. This is a cabin site that we're kind of in a debate about at the moment. It's potentially a corral because it's situated right next to this meadow that maybe could have sustained cattle. I don't know. It kind of looks like a cabin to me, but ongoing analysis for this one. But it had the highest walls of any of the cabin remnants we found, so that was interesting to know. In regards to my dissertation goals, I aim to accomplish two things at Tunna Nosi. So first, I will complete an investigation of the historic cultural landscape on the mesa during the 19th to mid-20th centuries. And specifically, I'm focusing again on understanding how Native communities persisted and continued to use and engage with their traditional landscape, despite the encroachment of these industries such as mining and different groups coming into the area. In addition, I aim to understand how these other cultural groups existed and made a living on the Tunna Nosi Mesa during this time period. And second, in collaboration with tribal communities, I will help complete this traditional cultural place nomination to the National Register under all 4 significance criteria. These criteria, if you are not aware, are summed up as criterion A, which is significance for history, B, association with a significant person in history, C, significance in architecture, and D, potential to produce data. And our goal with this is to make the nomination as strong as possible to really emphasize the uniqueness of this region. And we do have a strong case for 3 out of 4 of the criteria so far. The one that we're still kind of investigating is criterion B, association with this significant person. We think we can tie this area to Wovoka, but we're still trying to figure out if we can do that with, the oral histories that exist. But it would be nice to get all 4. So that's a goal that we have. On the screen, I have on the upper image is a Chinese cabin site. And on the lower image is actually the very first drone image I took of charcoal platforms. You could kind of see them in the middle there. They're just the 2 circular platforms, but the lighting is a little bit funny because there was a lot of wildfires going on at this time. This was in 2021. So with fieldwork, very excited to report what we've been doing. I have 3 different things I've kind of been doing to help support the data here. First is surface survey. I'll talk about that in a second. The archival review and oral histories are still ongoing. I've done a lot to get this data together. My goal really with a lot of this is to create some sort of nice database that tribes can also access so that they can engage with their own histories. The oral history has been going on since May of 2022. I've been very grateful to attend multiple Bridgeport Indian Colony events where myself and other volunteers conduct surveys and ask tribal community members to speak to their knowledge of actually both the Tunna Nosi area and the Dry Lakes area. And these surveys are kept with the BIC cultural department. They're kept confidential. They're not included if the participant doesn't consent to it, but if they do, then we've been putting it into the National Register nomination. In regards to the fieldwork itself, this was my first official field season. I've been up there before in August of 2021, as well as summer of 2023. So last year, roads were horrendous and we just could not get up there, but we were able to have a short field trip with a couple of our site stewards, Allison Harvey and Dave Valera, who are great supporters of this, as well as the new cultural coordinator of Bridgeport Indian Colony, Danielle Christensen, as well as her son, Vincent, who was 4 years old at the time and an absolute trooper. He was able to get up to the main mesa on this like crazy rock scramble, and he's been, I think, a great support to us ever since. He's been very intrinsic to these projects as we've gone forward. But in regards to summer, fall 2024, we've covered quite a bit of ground now, mostly in the middle part of the mesa, and the actual maps and data processing are forthcoming. But I was able to record many new historic features and re-record some of the previously known sites. So this included cabin sites, charcoal platforms, road systems, and several new exciting diagnostic artifacts. And I still need to process a lot of this data, but one last little field trip is happening this next Friday, and we're taking up community members to this mesa to be in the space, but also to engage with the sites. So very exciting that is coming together. I have a couple of the artifacts here. This on the left is a close-up of that cottonwood triangular point, and on the right is actually a blue bead, which I've been calling the blueberry bead because it looks like a blueberry. This was found at the South Village site, which is a Paiute site, campsite, and it was sitting right there in one of the house structures. So very clearly, this was probably deposited there sometime in the last 100 to 150 years or so. There is another bead at a different habitation site. So this on the left is a small red glass bead. It's a little bit melted. Really interested to know why that would have happened. It was kind of close to a cooking feature. I'm not sure if this was some sort of offering. I don't know. So that was a bit unique. On the right is a donkey shoe. It's a bit smaller than a horseshoe, found right next to one of the new cabin sites that we recorded. Really exciting find. This was like one of the main things I wanted to find on the Mesa because they're able to be dated, but also it shows that they were transporting things up and down this area. We find a lot of different trails, so I was really excited to find this artifact. Actually, our colleague Jim Delso found it. He's a photographer who was up there, getting a sense of the area and helping us with taking very nice pictures for our future nomination. And he was the one who discovered this, so thank you, Jim. And there was some really great sleuthing work done by Allison Harvey, a site steward. We found 2 cans that she was able to date. This is a lard can produced by the N.K. Fairbank Co., which was established in 1875. And the can itself has a patent date for that same year. The actual plant that this came from, the Chicago-based plant, was open only until 1921. So it is a bit of a long time period, but it fits right in that era of the 2 different boom towns. So that was really cool to find. The second can that we could get a date on is this baking powder can from the Guittard Chocolate Company, founded in 1868. And that company actually closed production on all non-chocolate products in 1906. So this can was made between 1868 and 1906. However, something to be aware of is that, these items, we don't know when they were deposited in the place. They would have been used for a fairly long time, even after the actual product inside them was gone. So you can see this hole that was cut into it. This was actually probably used as part of the heating pipe that would have heated up the charcoal, because this was right next to a charcoal platform, and turned the wood that they piled up into the charcoal product. So really interesting to see that. So it's kind of unclear when they would have deposited this. It could have been in 1868 or it could have been 1906 or later. So that's still some further research that I'll have to do. It would also be remiss of me to not include some of the many hundreds of pictures of cut stumps I have taken from the Mesa. This is just a few of them. I'm taking points and pictures of just as many cut stumps as I can to really try to figure out the pattern of deforestation on the landscape and see where, the old trees are, where the new trees are, and determine if there is any specific, trend in how wood was collected from the Mesa, and also to see if I could figure out if there's any native cut wood. It's usually it looks a little bit different. They were burned and chopped in more jagged ways rather than this sort of flat edge that you get on historic cut stumps. So this is just another avenue of analysis that I'm doing, but I think my colleagues are getting quite amused by every time I have to run off to record a cut stump. So thought I'd include it. In regards to future work, one of my next big projects is to process all the field data I have and start writing it up. Aside from this contributing to my dissertation work, like I was saying, we're using this for a National Register nomination, and that's going to take it's a long process to do. We just did that Dry Lakes Amendment, and even that was a long process, and we were just amending what was already written. But in addition to that, more field surveys are going to happen. Apologies, there's a little typo on there, 2024. I don't know why that's there, but this is happening next spring to fall 2025. I will be up there once again, recording historic sites, updating site records, identifying previously unrecorded sites, and drone mapping the Mesa. And it's important to note that based on the input and wishes of the tribal community, all fieldwork at Tunna Nosi is going to be surface survey only and will continue to be unless stated otherwise. And we are not doing any ground disturbance or removing any artifacts. And I will also note that the full area of the Mesa is about 10,000 acres, and there's no way I will be able to survey every single inch of those 10,000 acres, but I'm covering as much ground as I can, specifically with focus on the boundaries of our proposed National Register district. And in addition to all of that, I will continue to do these oral history projects where we will survey tribal communities, and, whether that is just our survey methods in paper form, or if people want to do one-on-one interviews to contribute to either my dissertation or the National Register nomination, whatever they decide is good with me. Quick little note on how I'm keeping things collaborative. I, have been reaching out to communities and people who are interested, calling, emailing, making sure that they're kept appraised of all, the work that's going on. I do my best to hold meetings as much as possible where people are free to voice their opinions, and, they can say whatever they want. They can voice their concern, whatever they're feeling about the project. They're, able to speak to that. I always bring food. I try to bring as much as possible so that, people are compensated for their time. I can't always, pay actual money for people's time and, help with this. So I try to do that with bringing food, baking cookies, whatever. And we've had quite a few. We try to hold them in different areas like Bridgeport, Schurz, Yarrington, Carson, so that people have the opportunity to join in person when they can. But I also have a Zoom option as well. It's also important to really be cognizant of data sovereignty, to make sure that people are aware of what you're including and to be careful of that. And that's kind of my last little food for thought slide, is to recognize that, taking care of these spaces is really important, and to do your best to do no harm, because they're still living descendant communities who engage with these places and are very it's very sacred to them, and it's very important. And we want to make sure that we're doing as much collaboration as possible and striving for this way to preserve these spaces in equitable ways. And I'm really just passionate about making sure that everyone is able to contribute when they want to, and able to say no when they don't want to. So that is a big part of what I'm trying to do with this archaeological project. And with that, my last slide is just to say Chokoi Tesiabu, or thank you so much. Thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Izzy. That was absolutely fascinating to listen to.
Thank you.
I thought that was, personally, I'm just gonna right on the get-go for myself, what I found very interesting was the comment of the chocolate can lid is what that was.
Yes.
And all I could think of is the bottle of soap, the plastic bottle for soap that is filled with used oil from cooking, that's sitting in my parents' garage.
See?
It's
You never know.
Exactly.
Yes.
But yes, I will be checking both chat and the QA if anybody has anything. So right now, I think I see one. From Stephen and Rebecca, they say, great presentation. Who decides what goes on the National Register of Historic Places? How difficult is the process?
Yes. So, okay, that's a great question. Allison Harvey, I also noticed, is on the call. She's one of my colleagues here. Oh my gosh, we've been going through this for so long. So the National Register is part of the National Park Service, right? So they're the ones, the keeper of the National Register is the one who has the ultimate say. However, there's so many different steps to get to that point. So you start at the state level with the State Historic Preservation Office. It's best to work with the offices. I'm probably going to be contacting the Nevada office soon, because I know this is going to be a long process to get Tunna Nosi on the National Register. But essentially you start by literally just looking at the website, what they require you to do, and start filling out the forms. The actual content that you need kind of varies based on what you're doing. So there's everything from, like, if you're doing a building, it's going to be a totally different ballgame than if you're doing something like a traditional cultural place. And for this, because we want to nominate it under all 4 significance criteria, we have to have our argument and evidence for why this particular district and this boundary is significant to Native history, significant to, for architecture, for the archaeological data, and it kind of revolves around a particular theme. I think what we're going for with this case is probably Native like survivance on the landscape for thousands of years. There's still a lot to talk about with that, but you kind of have to give this narrative of why it's significant, and really just like, bolster your argument with modern day data, so oral history data from living communities, but also the ethnographic records, so work that was done in the 30s and before that, and also the archaeological data, so what is on the landscape. So I'm kind of filling in part of this. Some of it has already been done. Allison, as well as a couple other of our colleagues, we went through a bunch of ethnohistoric data from the Bancroft Library of, different Native peoples from the early 1900s and their testimony of these regions, like stories that they told. And that's where kind of, what's being supported, with that is the oral history data that we've been doing in surveys. So actual modern day living tribal community members saying that they still go up to these places, why it's important to them, things like that. And so it's a long process of gathering data, especially with something like this, a traditional cultural place, because it's a lot of information you got to pack down into this, set document structure, including images and making sure that you have all the sites recorded, putting the maps together. So something like this, it's not easy. I gotta be honest. It was a huge learning process just to do an amendment for the Dry Lakes Plateau. And that took a lot of editing back and forth with the California SHPO. And I'm fingers crossed it's going through on the 7th. But yeah, so again, plugging if anyone is willing to write a public comment of support, I'm happy to drop that in the chat. Because
I was just gonna say, yes, please do so, because that is absolutely vital to put in for that. I know what your struggle is going through, because I've only just I've been helping out with a National Register nomination as well. I've only just done an outline to even start the big chunk of text of why something is significant. What does it mean? What's the context revolving around it? And that alone takes a long time, no matter how big or how small you're kind of going with.
Yes. So
thank you.
Yeah, it's an insane process when you really get into the nitty gritty, but it's been very rewarding. I'm so excited that we've gotten this far, and I'm really fingers crossed that we're going to be done with that amendment, and that's going to be going through sometime the beginning of next year. Again, you never know what happens, but because there is a lot of, it's not just like you that's in the process. There's all the different land agencies, landowners who have to, review what you've put together, and say that they're good, no conflict, no qualms here. But I would imagine it's a much less hassle to go through this kind of process if you have a historic building. Because it's like one structure. I'm sure there's still like some stuff to go through, but I'm like, it's one structure versus like this huge area. So I'm sure it varies state by state, item by item that you're working with. But this one, I can guarantee it's going to be no joke. And I have 3 more years in my dissertation track, and I don't even think it's going to be done by the end. I think we'll get a draft done by the end of those 3 years, but I don't think it's going to be fully finished for a while yet. And honestly, this has been a project like 30 years in the making since my colleagues have originally started working on this. The Dry Lakes Amendment was, years and years in the making, with Allison doing hard work, Debbie Lundy Painter doing hard work. So, oh man, it's going to take a while. But that was a great question, because I think people don't really know the process very well, and it's a really cool it's really fun to do, but it's also just like when you get into the details of it, it's a little bit rough. But yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, it is. A lot of people don't understand just how in depth it is. But Joanne Gira says, can you elaborate on how you think Wovoka could be tied to this area?
Yes. So I personally don't know much about Wovoka other than like, short history books I've read, things like that. We have actually, I think the Wovoka Committee is starting up again from the Arrington Paiute tribe. The former chair of that, who's now re-getting it back together, Miss Laverne Roberts. She's been an integral part of this, these multiple projects. She's been wonderful, and they did a lot of work to get that Wovoka wilderness in place. And we had this idea initially, we're like, is there someone a historical figure that could be tied to this region? And we know that Wovoka lived quite a bit in this area, especially toward the end of his life. And in talking to Laverne and other elders, I think it's quite possible that he could have been up here in this region. It's a very well-known region amongst different Native elders. And how we would tie him into it, I think would be, it's going to be a bit difficult because it's hard to, with oral history data alone, and it's especially with like modern oral history data. So we would like to see if we could find some evidence that would, place him in the Mesa area of the time of his life. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. It's, that's something that we still have to talk to our living Native community members about, especially Laverne, since she is the chair of the Wovoka Committee at Yarrington, and see if they have any knowledge, if they have any archival records in their, in the tribes that I haven't seen yet, because I've really only been working with like state databases, any of these like kind of local databases such as like, the UNR special collections, UNLV special collections. I've not personally gone through what the tribes have, and they have things that maybe other repositories don't have. So that's actually an ongoing sort of investigation to how we could tie him in particular to this region. I will say that there are sites at the Mesa that have been used up into the last 20 years or so, where people have continuously gone up, placed offerings at these sites. And so first of all, that's a great argument for a traditional cultural place. But in addition to that, I do wonder how long that tradition has been going on, since people have not at a certain point in the late 1800s to early 1900s, this place wasn't occupied in the same way it would have been 1,000 years ago, especially with this encroachment of settler industry. So it is a lot harder to tie a particular person to a landscape, especially when there isn't a lot of like direct historical written records about them. So there's not a good answer for that quite yet. It's like, it's kind of a question mark. We'll figure it out. So I am really hoping we can figure that out in some way, because we do have the other 3 criteria that Nevada SHPO has agreed to in the past. So it would be great to get all 4. I think all of my tribal partners would really like to get all 4, and to be able to tie someone like Wovoka to this, really significant and sacred landscape. I think it's really trying to find the data that could make that argument. There might be some people who say like, oh yeah, I knew about that, or like they know in passing that he was up there. That I don't know if that's going to be enough to support an argument for the actual National Register nomination. So it's going to be an ongoing process to really figure that out. But it's something that I'm looking forward to investigating a bit more and seeing what the elders of the community have to say about it. So I'm hoping that that'll work itself out. But yeah, that was a good question though, because it's something that was an idea I hadn't even thought of when I started this, and I was like, oh, Wovoka. I don't even know who brought it up. I was like, of course, like this area is really in super spirit, like about spirituality, and it's a really important spot. So we'll see. That's my answer. It's not the best answer, but it's what we have so far.
Close enough, but that was wonderful. Anybody else have any questions for Izzy? I'm looking at both chat and the Q&A, either one. Give you guys some time.
You can always email me if you want to be a part of our fun group. You can join as well. It's a lot of email blasts from me.
True. But I would say everybody to check out that link that Izzy provided to be able to help promote this National Register nomination, because that goes into the whole process of how you get something on the register, because you need public voices to promote that, to push it forward and progress. But if nobody has anything else, I think we could wrap up the speaker series event for tonight. So thank you, Izzy. This is an absolutely fascinating talk. I wish you blessings upon blessings with your PhD.
Thank you.
And this is such a huge undertaking that, you know, even you mentioned it before, even if you've got 3 years left, and even if you don't fully finish, if you get a draft done, that's still amazing. That's something you and your team and your colleagues and the tribes should absolutely be proud of.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited for all the work that we've done, and I'm like, I could not have done this alone. This is insane. So I'm like, I'm so grateful for everyone who's been a part of this and who supported it. And thank you for having me. I like talking anyone's ear off about this. So anytime.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And the rest of you guys, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to look out for email announcements for future speaker events. We've got the one for Jean-Guy, who's from Shippo, for November, I think he said November 6th. Let me look at my calendar really quickly because I don't remember. Sorry, November 8th. November 8th, Friday, November 8th, 6 p.m. It'll be another one like this. So thank you guys very much. I hope you all have the rest of a wonderful night and a wonderful weekend as well. So bye-bye. I'll be hanging here until everybody leaves. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.